Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Buy Round Interview Show. Today, I'm joined by a person who I had the pleasure of sharing the stage with a couple of months ago. Someone who I've admired from afar, a dual Australian international, a man that's had what seems to be 1,000 lives. Matt Rogers, thank you so much for joining us here on the Buy Round.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Jammer. I had a great time with you up there in, where are we?
Bundaberg.
Bundaberg, for the Queensland Bulls Masters lunch. It was great. And likewise, mate, admired your game, and you did things I certainly couldn't do on a football field. So, it's great to catch up and meet, past opponents and have a chat.
You know what's funny as well? I was going through some research last night and on YouTube. It's like Matt Rogers' greatest moments against St. Helens. I was at that game.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I was there.
Had a good game that day.
Yeah, 97.
Yeah.
And I would have been 12.
Yeah, right.
On standing in that, I was trying to pick myself out. No one was like, Jesus. It's funny how I was a boy. Yeah, watching you play against the team that I loved, and then here we are. It's like crazy how life works sometimes.
Isn't it? Yeah, I was thinking about you this morning too. I was thinking, well, imagine having the life that you've had. I mean, it's just you've moved to a different country, and you've done so well for yourself, for your family, and I admire it. Like, it takes a lot of courage to do what you've done. So yeah, well done, mate.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, look, I loved where I'm from, but here in Australia, as difficult it is. For me to admit, it is all right.
Mate, I played with a fella named Richie Mathers. You probably know him.
Yeah, I remember Richie Mathers.
Great fella, Richie. Yeah. Anyway, he was at the Titans at the Gold Coast, and he's from Leeds. And, I lived in the UK as a kid. My dad played for Widnes, and, I'd been over there as a 12-year-old. I was probably about 7 or 8, when I lived in England. And I had a pretty rough time, living in the north of England as a foreigner, the old school bullying wasn't quite looked after like it is today. And I was at primary school with my sister, and my brother was in high school. So I sort of had to protect my sister, and we got bullied a little bit, and well, not a little bit, quite a lot. Anyway, it was an interesting time, and I just found it really tough, as a young kid being over there, and didn't enjoy it that much, and it was always pretty cold. Back in those days, I was playing footy in the winter.
Oh, yeah, the winter.
So it was freezing, it was wet, and Richie Mathers came out and he was playing. I said, mate, you must, living on the Gold Coast, I said, you must love it. After about 6 months, he got homesick and he wanted to go home. I said, mate, I've been to where you live. I said, how can you possibly want to go back there compared to here? So it was interesting, yeah. But anyway, great fella, Richie. He's a great teammate, and you still stay in touch with him from time to time.
Yeah, mate, just on that, there's like for all the places in the UK you could have ended up. It's funny. I was with Willie Mason on the weekend, and he was talking about being in Hull, and he sort of slagged it off, and he got pushed back, and he's like, "You guys voted for this city to be the worst city in England," but on Widnes. There used to be like this old joke where, I was with this girl the other night. She said, "Kiss me where it smells." So I took her to Widnes. It's like, that was what people, because they've got all those big power stations.
Yeah, they do,
And I had some great memories of playing against teams in Widnes. But, mate, it's funny what you say about that decision to move over and the impact on family. And obviously, when I moved over, didn't have children. But for you to go over there and, I guess just the comparison between the beaches of Cronulla and Widnes, because there is beaches / not ocean, it's the sea.
Or Blackpool. We went to Blackpool.
Great. Oh, but at that age, you wouldn't be able to enjoy Blackpool like we could now.
No. Well, I'll tell you, we lived in this house, and we're backed onto like a cornfield, or there's just this big, and there were soccer fields out the back, and the kids would get out there and play. But it was a turnip field. That's what it was.
A
turnip farm.
Yeah.
And at Halloween, like, we'd never celebrated Halloween in Australia. That wasn't celebrated back in those days. And it's gained a bit of momentum over the years. But the guy who had the turnip farm at the back well, no one wanted to buy pumpkins, so we'd go and steal turnips, and we'd make sort of the jack-o'-lanterns out of the turnips. But the guy who owned the farm had a salt gun, and he'd shoot you in the arse. If he caught you stealing his turnips, he'd shoot you. Mate, so it was like a full covert operation. The kids would get together, you'd have them trying to, make a distraction over there in the field, and you'd be down in the bottom corner trying to rip a turnip out of the ground. It was there were some fun times, but ultimately it was just a rough time for the family because in the first game, Dad broke his leg really badly and snapped it completely. Had to have a rod inserted in it, so he couldn't play. So we stayed over there for an extra 3 or 4 months, and we sort of did a bit of touring around the UK. But Dad was struggling, and we were at school and sort of not enjoying that. And it was just he couldn't travel because his leg was so bad. By the time he got home, they'd realised that the operation had been a sort of failure, and they'd shortened his leg by 3/4 of an inch.
Oh, really?
So he had to have his leg rebroken, stretched out, new rod put in it, and that was ultimately what ended his career. They said you couldn't, if you play again and you break your leg, we're going to have to chop it off. So. Yeah, I've lost a pinky playing football, but I don't think I'd want to lose my leg.
No. That's incredible. I didn't realise that. So broke his leg after in the first 7 minutes of the first game.
Yeah, against Wigan.
And then could he not travel back to Australia? Because I assume he would have thought like it's done, I'll move back.
Well, I think he thought broken leg, get it fixed, maybe come back in 4 months' time.
Yeah,
that was sort of the goal, and. But what happened was he kept limping, and they were like, "Mate, are you right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, "Why are you limping?" And they realised like his leg was shorter. He was like one leg shorter than the other, so he walked with this permanent limp. When he came home, they had to re-break it and reset it. Yeah, it was pretty full on.
Yeah, it sounds it, and like.
The joys of footy.
Yeah, well, it's the gift that keeps on giving, doesn't it? So just on that, how are you right now? Obviously, we're going to dive into your career and your past experiences, but what are you up to these days?
There's a lot going on in my life. I got a beautiful family, got amazing wife and 4 kids. My 2 older kids are 28 and 25. They've both got kids. They've both got little toddlers. So I'm a grandfather, which is probably the biggest joy in my life, that has come, post, all the excitement that's happened, just the time I get to spend, I have my little grandson every Thursday night. So, he comes over and spends the night and, we hang out all Friday morning, we go and feed the ducks and, we have a great time. And it just, I think back to when I had kids and the time that I didn't get to spend with them because of my career and the life that I had, and particularly when I moved into rugby and I had a young family, I missed so much time with them. The time I get now, it's so precious to me. It's pretty special.
Yeah, with sport and the opportunities that it presents are amazing, and you wouldn't swap them. But there is, I guess, especially in rugby, there's a significant amount of time. Away from loved ones.
Yeah, and that I think World Cup year we spent about 5 months away from home in 2003. Oh, wow. But nowadays I'm busy. Like I've got a truck business, so I've got 5 staff that work drive our trucks, and got a sports management business. I do radio with SEN with Scott Sattler on each weekday night, which is a lot of fun. And I work for Stan Sport with the rugby, and my wife and I run a charity that we started 17 years ago. So there's always something, pulling in one direction or another. So, I try to be organised, but I'm glad I got my wife for that. She's probably the organiser, make sure I'm where I need to be.
A lot of things going on. When you said player management company, is that the delicate way of saying you're a player agent?
I am a player agent. I got to be honest.
You don't like it. It sounds like you don't like to admit.
It's like saying you're a used car salesman, right? You know what I love? I love the relationships I build with the players that we have. I didn't have an agent in my career. Like I did for the first 7 years, and then I did it myself. And I saw some things happen to players.
Sorry, you had one for the first 7 years, and and then went solo. What year would that have been?
Oh, probably 99, 2000. Yeah.
So your rugby deal you did yourself?
Yeah, I did it all.
Seriously?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't. I just thought I was capable of doing it, and I had my father who'd been around sport for a long time. I got advice from some very good people. A fellow by the name of John Dunphy, who used to own. He's passed away now, rest his soul. He's just a wonderful human being. He owned Shimano, the fishing company in the South Pacific, and his office was based out of Sydney, out of Cronulla. And he was a great friend of my dad's, and my dad used to own a sports store, so they became very good friends, and he used to supply him goods and stuff, and just a very shrewd and very honest and very caring man, and I would lean on him. So my first meeting I had with rugby, I rang him and I said, can you, I want to have a meeting with rugby, can you organise it for me? He goes, yeah, no worries. So we organised it, and we had it in his office with him there. Anyway, after the meeting and when they put all their cards on the table, I just said to him, I'm going to rugby. And he said, you don't want to talk about money? I'm like, no, not really. I said, I just, regardless of where I go, I know I'm going to get paid well, but I really want to do this because it's where I've come from.
Yeah.
All my mates are still playing for the Wallabies, and I want to go back and play with them. So when that opportunity arose, Jem, I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant. If you're good, you're going to get paid. So do you, like, I think that...
Yeah, do you need
the hardest thing for a player, I think, is coming into the game. Mm. And if you're one of those fringe players, I think it's really important to have someone, helping you along. But if you're a superstar, people come to you.
Yeah.
And particularly in this day and age, people come to you. So, and they can get to you, via any medium, through, people could probably reach out to you now that I've done the buy round and say, we want to speak to Matt, and they can get my details from you. They can get me on social media. They can, they can get me anywhere. So it's so easy for companies, if they want to engage with you, to connect with you. The hardest thing for young athletes is how to manage it from there. And that's where sort of we come in, and we sort of help them through that. But yeah, look, I just wanted to sort of, after seeing some things that I saw in the last few years of my career, I helped a few players out. And then when I finished, I had a couple of companies approach me. One established management company said they wanted me to come and work for them. I had a legal company that had done some work for me, so they wanted to start a management business and they wanted me to head it up. And all of which, when I sat down and spoke with them, they just didn't fit my MO. Like, they just didn't fit what I was about. So
what were they sort of?
Well, it was too much about the money that they were going to make and not enough about the player.
Okay, yeah, so it was all financial based outcomes as opposed to how we can help the individual.
Yeah, and look, we've got a good business and we do, we work hard, for the players that we represent. But yeah, look, the money side, that's got to come later. And I felt like the person's got to come first. And that's what really sort of frustrated me with the meetings that I'd had previous. So, I wanted to start Rogers Sports Management just purely on the basis of let's help some people, let's lay a pathway out for them and help them achieve their goals. And, I'd sort of like to think that, it's the players that don't make it are okay because we've looked after them.
Yeah.
And it's, look, do we get it right all the time? Maybe not. But I'd like to think we're doing a pretty good job. And I've got an amazing team. My business partner, Craig, is phenomenal. He was my first trainer at Cronulla in 1993 when I arrived. And he was in law enforcement. He worked in juvenile justice. And he understood young people. And he understood young people's tendencies. And, in that 1994 under-21 squad, I think there was about 8 or 9 of us that went on to play first grade, which is really rare for an underage team, for that many players to move on. And I credited a lot of it to Craig and the way he helped us as young kids navigate the waters of, becoming a professional athlete and understanding, what's right, what's wrong. And, there's what's right and wrong, black and white, do this, don't do this, but there's little idiosyncrasies in becoming a professional athlete that help you get to that next level. And he was so good at helping us, identify those and move forward. And my 40th birthday, it was my 45th birthday. So 4.5 years ago, we were having lunch. I still remember it at the Marriott Hotel, and I was talking to Craig and his wife Kim about the management side of things and how I'd been approached and blah blah blah. And Kim said, "You two should go into management together." And Craig became best mates with my dad, and then he left Cronulla and went to St George, worked under Wayne Bennett. So he'd been in the mix for so long, and he understood everything. And I trusted him, which is probably the most important thing. So I just said to him, "Mate, you're the only guy I'd do it with if you'd be up for it." And they had very successful business, and we were down the path in other areas, so we were going well. And he said, "Yep." He goes, "If you're up for it, let's make it happen." So we started Rogers Sports Management. Got a bit of criticism, I will say, particularly from the established management arena. It's a slow burn, you won't last, that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of people get into it and don't last, but they don't last because the money doesn't come straight away. It is a slow burn. It's hard work. It's a lot of work. But if your motives are right, then you're fine. And if you're not chasing the money, then I think that's fine. Because we were established, both Craig and myself, in what we were doing. We weren't doing this to make millions of dollars and whatever. If the company did in years to come, then so be it. But it wasn't about that. It was about helping young athletes, and it married up really well our timing with the start of the women's game, and Craig really wanted to dive into that, and we did, and we managed some great athletes now, and it's phenomenal.
Funny what you say there about I've never met Craig, but it can't be a coincidence that so many players from that junior team all went on to play first grade. You mentioned his understanding of young people's tendencies or their traits. I personally feel like it's an underappreciated ability, especially in shaping young people and impressionable people in any walk of life, but in football especially. Do you think that's the key thing that we're missing in sort of people and athlete development?
Influence is critical, right? Like who you're around, what influences you. And Craig was just a phenomenal influence on me as a young man. Now, he wasn't the fun police. He wasn't trying to stop me from having a good time and enjoying the moments that I was, achieving along the way. But he just sort of righted the ship from time to time about, different behavioural issues and stuff that, any, young kid coming through the ranks can potentially have. Like you feel pretty good about yourself when you're 20 years old and you're making great money, and you can sort of not do what you want, but basically do what you want, financially, because you've got all this money coming in. But yeah, look, he's been phenomenal. His wife Kim, she's amazing. She sort of heads up. Well, we say Kim's our boss. She is. She does all our admin and runs everything, and I'm just so grateful to have her in my life. As friends first and foremost. But to go into business with those two people, my wife and I, and Craig and Kim, and to be, we just love what we do. Like all of us, we love helping young people, and it's just, it's when you sit with someone and you can just see the light in their eye, like what they want, and you feel like you can help them achieve it, and getting that phone call from a player that's making their debut or they've made a team, and it's so rewarding, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
It seems like you get tremendous joy from all aspects of life. You show with Slats, you're working as a management company, not a player agent. Big difference. But your charity work as well. I know. Speaking when I spoke with you at the Sportsman's Day, you spoke so passionately about the work that you do in this space. I believe the catalyst was a diagnosis from your son. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, Max, I probably wasn't the catalyst. What was the catalyst? Well, Maxie got diagnosed with autism, and I don't want to sort of sound. Well, it wasn't a trendy thing back then. You know what I mean? There was no NDIS, and not that it's trendy, but like it's just autism is a hot topic. It's trending in a way that is not good, because it's more and more people are being diagnosed with autism. And I fronted my team doctor about it. His wife managed ran the school, the Early Childhood Development Centre in Burleigh, where Maxie first went. And I went and sat down with him, and I said, "Matey, the rise in autism diagnoses is just through the roof. Like, when Max got diagnosed, it was like 1 in 30 kids, or 1 in 160 kids, and now it's like 1 in 30. Like, it's crazy." And so I said to him, and I was in a good space in this time. I'm like, "Mate, you guys are just getting better at diagnosing it. Like, you're putting this on." He's like, "Mate," he goes, are you for real?" And we sort of went at it a bit. And he goes, "Mate, it's not us." He goes, we're doing something. The world is doing something, and we don't know what it is. And that's why there's more and more autism being diagnosed across the globe. He goes, "We're doing something. We don't know what it is." And he goes, "When we find out," he goes, "we'll be like, oh my God, we've been doing this, and it's been causing this." Because we're doing something that's causing it.
Is that in terms of the environment we're providing?
What we're...
Or the educate, or like aspects
what we're
of the
eating,
educate.
what we're
It's environmental as opposed to... Well, I'm no biologist.
Luck of the draw.
Yeah, it's not genetics. It's environment.
I think so. I think it's environment. Like you can't go from when my dad was a boy, it's like 1 in 1,000 kids, to now being 1 in 30. Like, well, what have we done in that 50 years?
Yeah,
we've industrialised the world. Like it's. Yeah, so it look, it got a little bit deeper than maybe I normally go on that topic, but all we do, and what happened, when Max got diagnosed, there was no real help back then, and there was no funding, there was no NDIS, and
you're a young father at this stage as well, like
29 years old. I've got 2 kids. This is my 3rd child. All of a sudden, we get this diagnosis, and I knew there was something wrong. Like, we're at, because Chloe was my second wife, and she was her first child, and we were at Christmas one year, and Maxie was about 18 months old, and he was just sat. He was with all his cousins, and he just sat at a tap for like 2 days, just playing with a dripping tap. All the kids are running around, and he's like, could have been. He was up and about, but we lost his. He was verbal, and then we just sort of lost it. And he just became like a little zombie, and his eyes. When you watch a zombie movie and they just walk, they look through you. That was Max in our house, and he went from every morning coming into our bedroom and giving me a kiss to he would just sort of walk into our room, just sort of glazed over, and I'd say, "Maxie, give me a kiss," and he'd just totally ignore me. And I remember saying to Chloe, "Well, why isn't he giving me a kiss anymore?" And Chloe's like, "I don't know, he's just a boy, And you just don't think anything. Then he stopped talking. So we sort of looked for answers. It was a nightmare trying to get a diagnosis, because doctors, they're trying to do the right thing. They don't want to put a label on someone. But as an athlete, if I don't know, like if I injured myself, I need to know what's wrong.
Yeah, give me the process to solve the problem.
I want to fix it.
Yeah. What's the solution? All right.
We eventually got a diagnosis that Maxie was autistic, and we found a school for him to go to. There was one on the Gold Coast that offered early intervention treatment, and it cost about $45,000-$50,000 a year. And we went and had a meeting there with our autism advisor. And we sat there, and she was giving us all this information. You can do this and this, or you can just bring them here, or you can do this and this, or you can just bring him here. And after about half an hour. I said, what's here? What are you talking about? And she goes, oh, this is an early intervention centre. It's privately owned, and they will offer all the treatments that your son will need, and hopefully get him ready to go into mainstream school. So I'm like, sweet, well, he's coming here, because I'm not equipped to do what's needed to be done. We went and spoke with the owner, and they said, oh, look, there's a 2-year wait list. And I'm like, well, how's it going to be early intervention in 2 years?
Yeah.
We need it now. She goes, well, I'm sorry, that's where we're at. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the owner, and the owner's like, you can bring Max in. And I said, what's going on? Like, look, you said there was a 2-year wait list. And she goes, I'll just come in, we'll have a chat about it. And I felt sort of, I felt really bad, to be honest. I wanted the help for Max, but I didn't want it to come at the expense of someone else. Yeah. And I was playing for the Titans at the time. You know, we were going pretty well, and I was sort of a bit of a face about town. I thought, geez, I hope they're not doing it because of who I am. So I sat down with her, Robin her name was, and she's lovely, and she started the centre because her son needed help, and there was no one, and so she just created the centre. She's done an amazing job. The centre still runs on the Gold Coast. It's called Little Souls Taking Big Steps. Phenomenal place, changed our life, this place. I went and sat with her, and she said, you can come in, there's a spot opened up for you. I said, well, why are we here? Like you said, there was a 2-year wait. She goes, oh, look, we've interviewed all the people before you that were on the wait list, but they can't afford it. And I was like, oh, right. I said, how much does it cost? She's like, oh, it's about $45,000 to $50,000 a year. And I'm like, oh, geez. You know, like we were making decent money, but to find an extra $50,000, just, you know, like it's tough. We made it happen. And Maxie went there, and after 3 months, Max started talking again. We got our son back. It was just phenomenal, the change in our son. And you know, I'll never forget, he said, I love you, Mum, to Chloe. And I don't think he knew what he was saying. He was sort of trained to say it. But those words you take for granted as a parent of typically developed kids. When they're when they're not, you just sort of you're just looking for just the tiniest little thing, you know. And he said, I love you, and Chloe just broke down, and she just said, that's it. She goes, we're not letting these people go. Like the people that were before us, we're gonna start a charity, and we're gonna raise money, we're gonna help them. So we did that. You're making me cry, Gemma. Stop it.
Mate, honestly, like
it was, we meant to be hard footy players. Anyway, we started 4ASD Kids, and you know, we've raised millions of dollars over the last sort of 17 years, and we've helped truckloads of families. We just, you know, it's been amazing. It's been probably my most proudest achievement, you know, of all the things that I've done. You know, being able to change a family's life, being able to hand over a check, or you know, get them into a school, or even, you know, I mean, last year we built, you know, the Currumbin Community Special School, which is just such a tremendous place, and just creates so much help and hope for young families. They built a new hall, but they couldn't afford to put air conditioning in it. Thinking, why the hell is the government not paying for this? But if you try to lobby the government, then you're going to be waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, stuff, we'll just do it. So we spent, I don't know, 50 or 60 grand and put a new air conditioning unit in the hall there, and we were actually just donated $70,000 to them to build a new playground for the kids. So to be able to do that sort of stuff, that will help ongoing, just, mate, it's like food for my soul.
Oh man,
you know, we live in a world that's just all about, you know, me and take, and all, you know, the way that the world is now with social media and influencers and all this sort of stuff. And I just think, man, and I also, you know, the way that my kids have responded to it too. Like, you know, there's 3 other kids in my family that aren't autistic, and that they probably missed out on a lot because of the time and effort we had to put into Max, and never ever did one of them begrudge it. My oldest boy, Jack, he's 28, and man, I'm just so proud of that kid. He's just bought his first house. He's a hard worker. He and Max are just, you know, they're best mates, you know, and you know, they fight like brothers, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the niggle. I enjoy the fun, and I enjoy all that. I don't want Max to be any different to the other 3 kids, but he is, you know, and they haven't begrudged it. They've been there for him every step of the way. You know, Skylar, my oldest daughter, she's 24, nearly 25. You know, she's got a young son, my little grandson Ryder. He's just an absolute little champion. You know, she's been through, you know, some struggles herself, and you know, she's never begrudged Maxie and never, you know, the kids and Phoenix. I mean, she's been there every day, you know, with Max, you know, from day one. You know, she's his younger sister, and she's 18 months or 16 months younger than him. But, you know, through the entire primary school process, she was there for him and looked after him and cared for him, and at the behest of her, you know, you know, she had to give up so much to be there for him that when they got to high school, you know, we sent her to a different high school to Max just to give her some space and some freedom. But Maxie's phenomenal. You know, he's doing so well. He graduated high school last year, went to Miami High, and they did a great job with Max. He's graduated now, and he wants to be an actor. So and he's hilarious. He's so much fun. And yeah, so if you know any producers who are looking for an actor, he can be the guy.
Well, I did feature in Plum, one scene and one scene only, so I've ruined my reputation. So I'm not the best.
Well, mate, I actually did a movie too back in the day when I was playing called Crooked Business. There's a Chris Nice film. He wrote the movie Getting Square. I don't know if you've seen Getting Square with David Wenham. It is hilarious. It's one of my favourite movies. And I was having a chat with him one day, and he said, do you want to be in my next film? I said, your next film? What's your first film? And he said, it's Getting Square. I said, Getting Square, that's my favourite movie of all time. He's like, well, mate, I'm doing another one. Do you want to be in it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So Princey and I played a little cameo. I was like a little thug that robbed a pawnbroker. But the pawnbroker was a bad man. So they came after us, which was funny. I think Princey had an iron put on his face. Yeah. Or maybe that was me. I can't remember. But yeah, it was, they're both funny movies, Getting Square and Crooked Business. So you've got to check them out, Jamie. You'll have a laugh.
Yeah, well hopefully Maxie can realise his dream or fulfil that dream and become an actor. I've just got to say, mate, like, it takes some special people to go through that, get the help, hear those words, I love you, that most of us would just take for granted. I get the opposite sometimes from my kids.
Yeah, well, mate, you know, I'm with you.
But then to just not just be happy and pleased for yourself, but because that is the default position. Like, I'm just grateful for the school, the help, grateful that we've got the financial capability to fund this, which obviously you said, but then to have that and go, we're going to do this for other people.
Yeah.
Share the love.
Yeah, well, I got to be honest, Gemma, it wasn't me. It was my wife. She's got an amazing heart for people. She's the sort of person that'll, you know, we'll be on holiday somewhere and she'll go to the bar and she'll come back and she's got someone's life story in 5 minutes, you know, like people just connect with her, and she's got a lot of love in her heart, and she it was her idea, and she was the real driver of it, and still to this day. I mean, she works so hard behind the scenes. I mean, we're a two-man band. There's no one else. If we raise $1, we give $1 away. So there's no staffing costs or anything. Our accountant, he's phenomenal, Alan. He's just does an amazing job. So, and he's volunteered his time from day one, and he's shrewd, because you can't mess up in a charity space. And he makes sure that every dollar's accounted for, and every dollar we raise goes to where it's meant to go. So I love being able to say that, that, you know, if we raise $1, we give away $1. The challenge when you do that is you don't pay any staff, so you rely on yourselves, and you rely on a lot of volunteers. So grateful for all the help we've had over the years, with some great people and great connections that have helped us do what we do.
And there's a big event coming up, a golf day. You're using charity, but a little bit of fun, because I know you like your golf as well. That must have been an easy fit.
Yeah, look, golf days are a lot of fun. You know, we did one years ago, and it was great. And then it sort of we sort of didn't do one for a long time. We were just thinking, you know, golf became a bit more of the flavour of the month about 5 or 6 years ago during COVID. And I thought, well, let's start a golf day. So we did. Been sort of going for 5 years, and it's just it sells out very quick. So yeah, look, I do get a lot of phone calls from people upset that they don't get in, because I sort of try to roll over about 30% of the crowd. So for anyone who comes, my criteria is, if you come and you're not putting your hand in your pocket for the fundraising aspect of the day, you won't be coming back next year.
Yeah.
So there's generally about 30% of the people that come along, and they just, they have a good time, which is great. They don't do a lot of the fundraising side of things, so they mightn't get an invite the next year. So there's generally about a 30% rollover. So there's not many spots available, but keep your eye out, because it's in October this year, and it's a hoot of a day. We've got great support from the team at Fizz and the Bolter boys, and it's a monster day. The team, like, the Fireball hole is always a fun hole.
What's the Fireball hole?
The Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You have a hot.
We've got a Fireball hole. They come out every year, and they light it up. It's just we have a lot of fun. And I get a lot of great support from very good people. And our major sponsor is it's bizarre. Like, our major sponsor is SBA, which is Salmon Bucket and Attachment. It's an earth moving business, and he's a Cronulla boy. He saw what I was doing. He said, "Mate, we want to get on board and support you." So they've been phenomenal. And we had Newman Steel come on as a joint major sponsor last year. So we were very grateful. We raised $100,000 last year, which was really cool. Yeah, in a day, which is. It's not easy to do.
That is very, very
it's our record. So we've got to break it this year, Jonah. You're going to have to come up and be a part of it. It's a lot of fun.
I'm not much. I can just hang around the Fireball hole.
Come and drive the drinks cart.
Yeah. Oh man, absolutely. That's where my value is. Otherwise, the day goes for a weekend with me playing golf. I am rubbish, and I'm not. It's a funny one with golf. Like, I'm not big on the etiquette.
Yeah.
That sort of irks me a bit. I tried to get into golf. I played, one of my best mates in England, in Liverpool, took me to Aintree Golf Course, which is a 9-holer.
Yep.
After 3 holes, he looked me in the eye. He goes, "I'm just letting you know, I am never playing golf with you ever again." And I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "Mate, we actually got to focus here."
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, "We're going to just have a bit of a laugh." And he's like, "Mate, well, I'm trying to tee off.
Yeah.
I don't need you like quoting some show or a movie." I'm like, "But why?" It's
Mate,
like, if you come, I'm all about, block out the noise. You can tell me a joke when I'm taking my swing. Like, that's fine.
Well, mate, I'll tell you, you'll fit right in with our Friday group. Our Friday group that I play with, it's all about fun, and there's a lot of noise and a lot of fun. There are other days when you'd probably get some death stares. Yeah,
I don't know. It's one thing that always makes me laugh. Like because people take their golf incredibly seriously. Yeah. Like, do you ever remember the show Jackass, where
the horn,
and like people like
launching drivers at them.
Yeah, but just set the ball up and just whack it at them. It's like, ooh, like
there are people that take it a little bit too serious. I mean, I enjoy golf and I love it. Like, I play a lot, and it's just a good downtime for me. You know what? As a kid, or as a young adult playing sport, there are a couple of things that I love playing. I love playing rugby league. It was like a sanctuary for me. It was like my escape from the world, and I love surfing. And I was out in the water. Nobody can get me. I can just surf, and if someone is annoying me, I can paddle away and find another break to surf or peak to surf on. And golf is sort of, It's that for me again, like I said, I've got a lot of things that pull me in different directions in my life. But when I'm on a golf course, I'm with people that I want to be with, and it's like I can just turn the phone off, chuck it in the cart, and I can just enjoy a few hours of peace, which is good. It does come from some frustration with that peace when you actually play the game, but I do thoroughly enjoy getting out there.
Man, that's funny, because I knew that you're into your golf and your surfing, but they don't seem like, what's that thing where you do the circles and you cross them, the people in the middle that do golf and do surfing? Yeah. I thought they'd be like mutually exclusive.
No,
like,
mate.
It seems like opposite personality types that you're right. If I'm a surfer, then I don't like golf, or if I'm a golfer, I don't surf.
Well, Kelly Slater is a very good golfer, and he had a big influence on the tour. So a lot of the the surfers who surf through that era are all golfers too. Like Martin Potter, he's a good golfer. Tom Whitaker, who was on tour, he's a good golfer. There's a lot. I'm just racking my brain to think. Ronnie Blakey, he owns the par 3. What's it called? Shorties over in the Northern Beaches. Loves his golf. Yeah, like lots of Julian Wilson, gun golfer. They all, and I think Kelly had a lot to do with that.
Yeah,
in his love of golf, and people want to get close and in his space. End up playing golf. Yeah, it's good. I love getting out there and just sort of chilling out.
On sports, like between golf, surfing, I think both individual sports, but opposite in personality type and interest. That personality type and whatnot. But you had plenty of options. So rugby league, rugby union, very similar. What was it that made you choose rugby league?
I was just probably my old man as a kid. Like who he was, and particularly living in Cronulla and him being the captain of Cronulla, and from what I remember of as a kid, from what I can remember as a young kid, it was just I feel like I grew up at Shark Park. Like I grew up in the dressing rooms. I was always there. I was ball boy for the club. I was just, so I had this real desire to chase Dad down and to be like Dad. Like what young boy doesn't want to? Their dad's their hero. And I guess I lived in a world where Dad was my hero, and there's a lot of other young boys' heroes too. And
was that strange?
I've never known anything different.
Yeah, so, that's true. Yeah,
it was just normal. Like I just, and even growing up, people, friends of mine will be out and people will come over and like, oh, is that weird? I'm like, no, it's not. Like it just is. Like it might be if you'd never experienced it as a kid, but from the time I can remember, we always had people come up to us. That was
your normal.
So it's like life's normal. And my wife, she lived in that world too. She was in the media and modelling and all that sort of stuff. So everyone knew her, and so and our kids they all get it, they understand it, and my dad told me at a very young age, like because we would get annoyed, and we'd go somewhere and we'd sort of lose our dad, but he made it very clear to us that it was because of those people that we have the life that we have. So respect it and don't complain. And so I stopped complaining, and I've said the same thing to my kids. When they ever get upset, I'm like, darling, we've got our life because of the people who have supported me and the game that I played. So we can't disrespect that.
Did you feel the pressure when you were coming through Cronulla? And because actually, before we go there, the union was an option as well before you were at league. But was it not professional at that stage?
No,
it hadn't quite turned pro.
What happened, Gemma, it's like my dad was my hero, right?
Yeah.
We moved to Queensland. I was 8 years old, and I started playing rugby league up here and up in Queensland, and loving it. I'm going good. As a young kid, there was even a couple of news articles written about me, and then I played for Queensland as a 12-year-old, and my old man. He's a hard man, right? Like back from born in the 50s, and his old man was a World War II veteran, and just Dad was just a hard guy, and he wasn't very emotional. He was at times, but he was just hard, and I was just trying to get him to be proud of me, and love me, and just I know, and that's why I was just trying so hard to be the best footy player. Dad worked. He was busy. Life's hard when you finish playing football, and he was in that space. And I just never saw him, and I never got any love or appreciate. I know he felt it because I know now, because I've retired and I had a young family. I know how hard life can be. He was in that space, and I never got a lot of pats on the back or "You're doing well, son," or "I'm proud of you. I love you." There was none of that. It just wasn't in his MO, And after making the under-12 Queensland side, I didn't get any love or anything, so I just didn't play. I said, I'm not playing anymore. so I didn't play at 13. So from the age of 12 to 14, I didn't play. Like once I sort of made that Queensland team and finished that season, I didn't play another game of rugby league until I played professionally. So at 13 years old, I just surfed. Mum and Dad bought the pub at Lennox Head, and they had some partners. They were running the pub, and Dad was super busy. Mum was running the bistro, and literally I was a 13-year-old kid left to my own devices in Lennox Head. The surf was pumping every day, mate. Basically, I would literally just didn't play footy, just was hanging out with some kids, probably got led, a couple of older kids that sort of probably led me down the wrong path, and ended up, vandalising stuff and just getting in all sorts of trouble, and ended up going to juvenile, getting arrested and going to juvenile court. And the judge, I'd been offered a scholarship to a boarding school after I'd played for Queensland in rugby league, and Dad was keen to send me there, and I was so I don't want to go to a boarding school. I want to stay with the family and that. And Dad's like, all right. After about 8 months of being down in Lennox, I got into all sorts of trouble and really bad stuff. And the judge was going to sentence me to juvenile detention, and my dad said to him, he goes, I've got an opportunity to send him to a boarding school, if that would suffice, if that suffice. I know he's done the wrong thing, but he can go to this school or he can go into juvenile detention, and I just know which one will be better for him, because he's not the kid that he's been. He's not the kid that he is. And the judge listened to my dad and said, okay, he's got to go to boarding school for 2 years. So I hated it for the first couple of months. I'd ring my mum every night and go, you've sent me to prison. And I remember my mum, she goes, no, we didn't send you to prison. The magistrate would have sent you to prison. We've helped you. So pull you, I couldn't ring to my dad, because my dad would have kicked my butt. Like, I got a flogging after I got into all sorts of trouble and got sent to boarding school. And after about 3 months, I got into the footy side of things at the school, and it was a rugby school. It was the Southport School on the Gold Coast, and that that certainly, in terms of like a sliding doors moment, like this.
Yeah, wow.
Mate, like juvenile detention, the Southport School. Like, if you've been to the Southport School, it's one of the most prestigious schools in Queensland. It's on beautiful grounds right on the Narang River. It was, other than those first 3 months, it was the 4 best years of my life. Like, I learnt, my dad said, you weren't there a boy, you came out a man. And that's what the school did for me. And I played rugby exclusively for those 4 years, and I played for Queensland when I was 15, and then again in the open schoolboys, and then played Australian schools. And the next year was 1994, the year that I came out of 1993. I finished school, so 1994 was the first year I was going to be out of school playing sport. Rugby wasn't professional, and in my mind I was going to stay in rugby, and it wasn't the fact that I got offered big money to go back to rugby league, because my dad was like, man, if it's about money, stay in rugby and play rugby, play for the Wallabies, and then get them to pay you to come over. You'll make more money that way. So that was sort of on the cards. That's what I was going to do. But Cronulla, at the 11th hour, sort of came knocking. They didn't know where I was. They didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know Dad's son was doing any good. And Tommy Bishop, who played with Dad in 1973, you know Tommy Bishop, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So Tommy used to come and watch me play at Robina, because Mum and Dad had sold the pub and moved to Darwin. I'm living on the Gold Coast. Tommy Bishop, out of respect for Dad, would come and watch me play because Dad couldn't be there. And Dad didn't want to speak to any rugby people about how I was playing, because he didn't like rugby and he didn't believe that they were hard. And, it was funny. So Tommy would come, and then Tommy would give a report back to Dad each week, and how it was going. And when I'd played Australian schoolboys in the end of 1993, I'd sort of all but in my mind decided I was going to GPS Rugby Club in Brisbane, and to play the following year. And then Tommy rang the Sharks, and he said, "What are you doing with Sludge's boy?" And they're like, "What do you mean? Where?" Like, there was no social media back then, no like YouTube clips, none of that stuff. So Tommy rang the club, and they said, "Well, we don't know. What's he doing?" They said, "Man, he's just played for Australia in rugby union. He's a gun. You should get him." So they they rang Dad and they offered me a deal, and I was still like, no, I'm going to stay in rugby. I know I want to play for the Sharks, but I want to keep playing rugby. I want to play for the Wallabies, because I became just a rugby tragic. After the '91 World Cup win, watching that in the dorm at like 2 a.m. I wanted to be a part of it, and so Dad said, all right, I'll tell him. My brother was a couple of years older than me, and he was playing up in Darwin. And then Dad rang me and goes, mate, if you sign with Cronulla, they're going to sign your brother as well. And that was sort of like I desperately wanted to play with my brother. I never thought it was going to happen. So when they said that, I was like, all right, I'll come to Cronulla. And went back to Cronulla, and I guess the rest is sort of history. I was there for 8 years, and I never really got to play the football I wanted to play at Cronulla though. Like I got sort of shuffled wider and wider and wider as sort of the year went on, and I ended up playing on the wing, and had to do sort of a roundabout trip to get back to sort of playing in the middle of the field where I wanted to play.
You wanted your hands on the ball.
Yeah. I just knew I had more to offer a team than sitting out on the wing. I knew I could play on the wing. But I knew if I was in the middle and I got the ball more, I could do more. So I ended up sort of just playing a pretty loose role on the wing there at Cronulla. I think the stat guy there said to me, like, I scored 76 tries there, and he said, of your 76 tries, like 35 of them have been on the other side of the field. I'm like, right, yeah, well, that makes sense.
Almost like a second fullback.
Yeah. And I would play that role, but and because I did that, I guess, I got noticed and ended up playing for Queensland and Australia, but in my heart, like, I was never in the position I wanted to be in. I knew I had more to offer a football team. So
I was going to say, because when you were beginning your professional career on the wing, this was around about the time, rugby league learnt from the example of Jonah Lomu and the big guys on the wing. Some of them ended up being your future teammates in that Wallabies team in Big Dell and Lottie Takiri. Because it probably was a thing, I'll throw the smallest kid on the wing, and it was a not non-desirable position, but it became super important. You got these big guys coming in. What was it like for you being, I guess, pound for pound, probably better, but physically, you've got giants.
Yeah, well, that was. I mean, I got put on the wing to protect me. That's what, like, John Lang's decision to put me on the wing was to look after me. What happened was, like, I played fly half in the Australian schoolboys team, and I came down to Cronulla, and in the first trial match in the President's Cup under 21s trial match, I went out and I played, and I trained at 5'8" during the week and in the weeks leading up. But in the game, just something clicked in me, and I kept chasing the ball. Like, as a fly half in rugby, you want to be one pass away from the ball, sort of thing. You want to be in position to sort of control it. So I was getting in the halfback's way all the time. This was before the sort of left and rights and all that sort of stuff, So the half and 5'8" was sort of together, and I was getting in his way. So they said to me, just go out in the centres in the second half, play in the centres. And Adam Dykes, who's a great footballer, came in and played 5'8", and I scored 3 tries in the second half in the centres. Ended up playing that whole year. I think we lost one game that year to Manly, and it was a Billy Weepu kicked a goal from halfway. I'll never forget it. I didn't play in the game. I was playing reserve grade that night. Actually, in 1993, I didn't lose a game of. In 1994, I didn't lose a game of football.
Seriously?
So, no, didn't lose one.
Wow.
So the night that we lost, I was playing reserve grade against Manly, and we won in reserve grade, and our team got beat on the buzzer. It was 16-all, I think, and Gavin Clinch, who ended up going on to play first grade and playing at Penrith, he tried to do a short kickoff. It didn't go 10. They had a shot at goal from halfway. Billy Weepu's toe poked it. It's gone a foot above the crossbar the entire way. And, mate, if it had hit someone, it would have killed them. Yeah. They beat us by 2 points in that team. But we went on to win the comp that year. And, Ken Arthurson and John Quayle both came out and said it's the best President's Cup side in history. And it proved to be. We had the likes of Adam Ritson, David Peachy, Sean Ryan, myself, Gavin Clinch, Adam Dykes, like all players that went on to play first grade and have pretty successful careers.
In and around that stage, it wasn't long before the Super League war broke out. Obviously, I'm in England watching you come over, play that World Club Challenge. Every young player that was a gauntlet showing signs of potential, was a bidding frenzy. What are your recollections of that?
Oh man, this is a story. So we were one of the first clubs to get done. When I say get done, because I mean there was a lot of money on the table, but we didn't see it initially. So
for the Sharks,
yeah, for the Sharks. Yeah. So the Sharks had agreed to go to Super League.
Yeah,
but
the players
hadn't told any players.
Yeah,
they just done the deal. They'd spoken with Les Davidson and Andrew Eddinghausen. They'd both signed, and they were our senior players, and they were gods to us. I mean, we were 18, 19 years old, and we played a game in Western Australia at the Wacker, and generally back in those days, when you're travelling in a rugby league side, you're staying in the Best Western or the Flag Inn. You're not staying in ritzy places. This is before Super League, right? We win the game, and John Lang comes onto the field, and we played the Reds back-to-back weeks. We played them at home. It was like the weird draw. Played them at home, we got beat. Played them at the Wacker, and we won. John Lang comes out on the field. We get in a little huddle. We have this, he has a chat to us about, great effort. And then he goes, boys, we're not going to the dressing room. We're going straight past the dressing room. Your bags are on the bus, fully dressed, get on the bus. And we're thinking, what's going on? Like, this is amazing. And we pull up at the Sofitel. So take your boots off.
Sorry, can I just ask? I know what footy teams are like. Were people, like, what was the chat like on the bus? If you don't know where you're going, like, are you thinking nightclub? Are you thinking, well, like, where would you? What was the rumours?
Well, this is the thing, right? So no one knew. Obviously, ET and Les knew, but they weren't giving up anything. They were like playing dumb like everybody else. We pull up out the front of the Sofitel, like nice hotel in Perth, and we get off the bus. And we get handed our room keys and our bag. We had to take our boots off. Our room key and our bag. So go up to your room. Everyone's got their own room. That never happens, right, back in those days. You got your own room. So we go up there and it's like, go to your room. Don't talk to anybody. Come down. We want to speak to everybody in the ballroom on level 3, whatever. So we all go up, put our best on, like we're going out. It's like we're going to go out and have a few drinks, celebrate. So we all come down. We rock in. There's 3 tables of, 8 or whatever. Big silver tin full of beers in the middle. And we're like, how good is this? And this is like, again, like, remember, like, no one's making any money here. Like, we're all, we're playing footy. We're making a little bit of money, but most of us are young kids and not making good money. So free beer and stuff, it matters. Like, you're pumped up.
The fact that you're being provided free booze is it's amazing, right? And, in a nice swanky hotel.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah, and we've got our own room, and it's like, wow, this is unbelievable. End up sitting down, having a beer, and Shane Richardson comes in with Ken Cowley, who was Rupert's right-hand man. And I'm like, what's going on here? And he goes, and then the story of Super League gets told to us, what News Limited's going to do. And then Shane Richardson says, and the Sharks have decided to go over and be a part of this new competition. And you don't have to be a part of it, but you can be. So we're going to take you in one by one into the room next door, and we're going to have a chat with you, and then you can go back to your room after we've had a chat. Mate, I'm 18. I think I was 18. I'm like, so they're having me, like they've got to speak to every player. There's 20 of us, or 17 of us there. So, like, by the time it got to me, I was like number 10 on the list. Like, I'm 6 beers deep. I'm 18, I'm 70 kilos. Like, you reckon I wasn't pie-eyed? Like, I'm sitting with Ken Cowley and Shane Richardson. Shane Richardson, I think...
Half cut.
Yeah. Shane Richardson, I think, one of the best sports administrators in the country, without a doubt. What he did since he came down to Sydney with the Sharks, then at Penrith and at South... Now
over in England as well with Hull or Gateshead, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there with, like, as an 18-year-old, fresh-faced, half-cut footy player trying to negotiate a deal with Ken Cowley and Shane Richardson. And they're like, they put an offer on the table. I'll never forget it. They're like, we'll pay you, what was it? It was $80,000. No, it was $100,000 next year, $120,000 the year after, and $140,000 the year after. And I'm like, I was on like 30 at the time. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm 18 years old, 19 years old. Mate, I just went, where do I, and then Shane goes, but if you sign now, we'll give you this. And it was a $25,000 check. So a signing bonus.
But you got to sign
now.
in the room today.
Yeah, now. I said, can I call my dad? And like, yeah, of course, call your dad. My dad was in Darwin at the time, like running the league up there.
Do you mobile phones then?
Yeah, there was mobile phones.
Yeah.
But dad was out on the piss, so I couldn't get him. So I'm like, what am I going to do?
Oh, I feel like I'm nervous for you.
And I don't have an agent. And I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, so I'm like, this is like more than three times what I'm making now. Like, and I'm playing for the Sharks. Like, why wouldn't I not sign this deal? And they're going to give me $25,000 right now. Why would I not sign this deal? I'm trying to think of all the reasons why I wouldn't sign it.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I didn't come up with was that maybe the ARL might have a counter offer. So I'm like, I didn't think of that. I'm like, yeah, I'll sign. So I signed. Walked out with this $25,000, and you weren't allowed to go back in the room to tell anyone. You had to leave and go back to your room.
Yeah.
But then all the other boys are on the floor in the foyer going, what'd you get? What'd you get? So, I'm like, mate, can you just believe what happened? They're like, nah, how good? So anyway, the next day, it is blown up in the press, like absolutely.
So prior to this,
nobody knew.
You didn't.
Nobody knew. So like Super League wasn't a thing. We were the first. Us and the Warriors, I think. Anyway, so the next morning, it is front page everywhere. Player managers had spoken to press, players had spoken to press, and I hadn't spoken to my old man. But my old man rang me. He's like, "Did you sign?" I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "You idiot." I'm like, "What, Dad? I want to play for the Sharks." He's like, "Mate, do you not think the ARL are going to come and counter offer? Do you don't think they're not going to want to keep you?" I'm like, "Oh no, I didn't think of that." So anyway, Dad was good mates with John Rebo, and he was good mates with Quayle and Arthurson. So he's like, "Well, look, I'm just going to speak to both of them." So he rang up John Quayle and Arthurson and said, what's to go here, and explained the situation. He goes, "Look, he's signed that under duress. Like he's
Under
drinking.
The influence. Yeah.
He's like we can throw. If he wants to come in and meet with us, we'll put an offer on the table." And we'd love to have him back in the ARL. And I'd had 3 first grade games at this stage. This is the start of '95. So, but that was an important people for them to get, young talent. They can't just get the old guys. They need everyone.
Yeah.
So I ended up going in a meeting with the ARL and Frank Stanton. And Frank Stanton, my whole childhood, my dad called Frank Cranky Frankie, and that's what they called him. He was a coach, I think, of the '82 Kangaroos, the Invincibles. He's a good friend of Dad's, and he said, "I want you to go and meet with Frank and just explain everything, and I think they'll at least match the offer." So I went in there and I met with Frank, and Frank said, "What's the offer?" And I told him. He goes, "All right, well, mate, we can find you a club, an ARL club." And being my dad was captain of the Kangaroos and stuff, I thought, yeah, okay, this is the right thing to do. And then he said, no. What happened was he said, "Oh mate, we can match the offer, no problem." So I ring my dad. I'm like, "Dad, they said they want to match the offer." And he goes, "Yeah, that's good." I'm like, "No, Dad, I don't want to." He goes, "Mate, there are some lovely places out at Parramatta you can live." I'm like, "I don't live at Parramatta. I want to live in Cronulla, and I want to play for Cronulla." And he goes, "Mate," he goes, "Listen, we're ARL." He goes, I want you to stay in the ARL." So I'm like, "All right, Dad, I'll do it." I said, "But I'd really like to get paid more if I'm going to go and play somewhere I don't want to play." And he goes, "Mate, I don't think it's the time for that." He goes, "Just go in and agree to the deal." So I went and I sat with Frank and I said, "Okay, I'll agree." He goes, "We don't want to be greedy, take what they're offering you and we'll find a club." Anyway, so Frank walks out of the room and I was just sort of getting my stuff together, and Gus walked in. And Gus wouldn't have even probably known who I was, and he's like, who are you? What are you doing here? And I'm like, "Oh, I just came in. My dad organised for me to come in and speak with Frank about staying in the ARL." And Gus was like perplexed at why I was there. And he's like, "Mate, what's the offer?" And I said, oh, it's just what Super League offered me. He goes, mate, that's too much. He's like, there's not even going to be a Super League. And I felt like this small. And man, I hold no grudges against Gus or anything like that. It was just like this moment. But this is Gus Gould. And I'm like this 18-year-old kid, like just deer in the headlights. Again, no agent. It's just me. And yeah, he said, there's not going to be a Super League. And I'm like, oh, no. So I walked out of the meeting just in a different frame of mind. And I rang Dad. I said, Dad, I don't want to play in the ARL. You know, like I want to stay with my friends at the Sharks. Because being in that environment where I was just like a stranger in this, it just made me feel really uncomfortable. And I went, I'm staying with the Sharks. He's like, tell me what happened. I sort of told him. He goes, mate, let me call Gus. I'm like, no, don't worry about it, Dad. I don't want this to become an issue. I don't want it to become a mess. Just let me stay where I am. He's like, all right. He goes, but you're not staying on the money that you're on. I'm like, sweet. Well, what do we do? He goes, I'm ringing Rebo. So he rang Reeves and said, Reeves, we need to have a meeting. And you've got my son under, duress. He'd been drinking. You take him in there and sit him in front of these two guys. As an 18-year-old kid, I'm not having it. And Gus and Reeves is like, righto, well, let's have a catch up. So we met at Sheraton on the Park in Sydney. I walked in there with Dad. There was Ken Cowley. There was Peter Mulholland. Skull was there. And there was a story behind that as well, why Skull was there. Skull was a part of the Western Reds, and they wanted Dad over there, the Super League. So it was always like a 2-for-1 deal here that they were doing, but we were unbeknownst to it. So we sit down, and literally, as soon as our asses hit the seat, Rebo says to Dad, Sludge, let's get the elephant out of the room. What are we going to have to pay your son to keep him in Sharks colours? And we hadn't really discussed anything. And my old man goes, $250 a year. And Rebo looks over at Cowley, and Cowley goes, done. Can we eat and enjoy dinner now? And I'm like, yep. The whole time I'm sitting there thinking, we could ask for 500. We could ask for anything. We walked out, and my old man's like, and he had that exact thought. He goes, I'm filthy on myself, Matt. And I said, he goes, I should have asked for more. I said, Dad, 2 weeks ago, I was on 30 grand.
Yeah.
I'm on 250 grand. I said, you told me, with the ARL, let's not be greedy. I said, I'm so happy, Dad. I feel like I've just won lotto. And we did. It was 2 days ago, 30 years ago that happened.
Oh, really?
That day was 30 years ago, 2 days ago, right? And I was talking about this on our radio show last night. So what do you think, if it didn't happen, where would we be? Well, I'll tell you, if it didn't happen, we would be fighting out for second spot on the sporting landscape with rugby union. And AFL would have absolutely decimated rugby league because their foothold they're still, like, we're still competing. But like back then, like what AFL were doing with their Auskick program, with the money that they were pumping into juniors, the development of their game, like I think we would have been fighting for second place instead of, toppling AFL for first place.
Why though? Because the battle wasn't with AFL; it was a fight from within.
Yeah,
so,
no.
So
what I mean is
resources were not going into.
Yep.
So yeah, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean?
So what I mean as a sporting code, our TV rights deal were awful. So there was no money to invest back into the game, and the salary caps were small. The player payments were small. What it did was it put more money back into the game in terms of TV rights, in terms of exposure. Like back then, we were playing. There was a game on a Sunday at 2 p.m. on ABC. There was a game on Friday night, and there was a Sunday Channel 9 game. Like that was it.
But would that not have changed naturally?
Well, I feel like Kerry Packer had the NRL by the balls sort of thing. But he got the TV rights deal cheap, and the money wasn't flowing back into the game. I think what Super League did was it changed the landscape, similar to what World Series cricket did for cricket with one-dayers, and probably what's happening now with, like, where's all the money in cricket now? It's in T20 in India, and like things change and things get bigger, and that doesn't mean they necessarily get better. But I think, to this point now where we are, I think our game is in a net positive position based on what happened back then. Back then, you probably wouldn't have seen it, wouldn't have thought about it. And people can say it's easy for me to say because, you know, I went and I took the money. But don't worry, the ARL guys got paid too.
Did you keep your contract after that? Like, so you signed a Super League deal on 250 for how many years?
3 years. And
Super League lasted one season? You keep your 250?
Yep. Contracts never. It was a part of the agreement when they came back together. Everybody had to give up a little bit. New Zealand had to keep paying the players. You know, there were players that signed monster deals that were still getting paid a few years after they retired. You know, like, I mean, it was a crazy time. But I just think the exposure for the game and the way that the game is today, and when I say net positive, I mean, you know, we would have lost a few fans back in those days. There's no question. Yeah. People were pretty disenchanted with the game. But I think we've gained a lot more over the last, 30 years as opposed to what we lost based on the product that we produce today.
It is crazy that, like, I have a shallow understanding of it, but I love hearing stories about it because, like, it divided people. It put people off the game forever. People
it ruined friendships that have been lifelong friendships, which is sad.
Yeah.
If it all happened again, how would I be? I don't know. I mean, change is hard for people, but change is also good when it's done.
Yeah.
Just going through the change.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, great way of putting it. Yeah.
When the change is done, it's like, you don't change a football team unless you can make it better, right? It's like people say, and Nico cops a lot of heat at the moment. It's like, you shouldn't be playing this or you shouldn't be playing that. Well, we're not going to move stuff for making it, unless we can make it better. And I think it's undue heat too, just quietly. But, and John Lang used to say it to me all the time as a player. He's like, when you've got, you don't want to change things unless you can make it better. And I was always of the opinion that, I wanted to play in the middle of the field, and I would say to him, mate, I want to play in this. Like Mitch Healy might get injured. He was 5'8", and they'd put someone else in. I said, why can't I go? He goes, mate, because what I've got with you on ET is unique, and it's so good that if I change that, it's not going to make it any better. It's going to be worse. And I don't know if you going in there is going to make us better. So I'm not going to ruin that part of our team for the sake of hoping you're going to make that part better. And it was a bit of an eye-opener for me, particularly in the team format. Nowadays, when you see people, particularly fans, they complain a lot about different players. And it's like, all right, well, that's what you're complaining about. What's the solution? How do you make it better? Is it going to be better if we do this? And the big thing at the moment is the trade window. Everyone's carrying on about the trade window. I heard Clint Newton on SEN yesterday, and he made a really good point. He's like, you put teams in a trade window and you make them rushed to make decisions and they make poor decisions, that'll ruin that club for years. And it's right. You give them time, they can make more discerning decisions, pick the right players, and they can lead in with time. They signed Jerome Luai a year ago, the Tigers, gives them time to build a team around Jerome Luai. People go, I'll go there because he's there. Like, if you do it in this little window, and, I'm a big American sports fan, and I think they have a trade window, but it catches a lot of teams out. And my team, which is the 49ers, they've got $120 million dead cap money next year. $120 million that they've just thrown away. That is because in the trade window they spent money on the wrong players, and that could happen in rugby league.
It is interesting that because it's incredibly complex. There are no perfect solutions. There's going to have to be trade-offs.
Yeah,
and for me, it's about looking at it as, it's not like, I think when we break down the problems, we silo those problems and go, look, if I do this is what will affect in this area. But if we look at it from as a whole of game, whole of systems approach, I'm of the personal opinion that I was against it as an athlete, as a player.
Yeah.
But I think for the system as a whole, I think it would work better. But that's...
It might.
We won't know until we can't. Sorry, you can't adapt the rule or the phrase. We won't know until we try it, because I don't think there's any going back.
No,
if we go that way.
Well, I mean, you just got to be careful of the unintended consequences that come with any sort of change. It's a tough one, and there are people in positions that are a lot smarter than me that'll make the right decisions, I hope, for the betterment of the game. But I mean, as far as the game goes, I mean, if that's our biggest issue,
yes,
we're doing all right.
Yeah, we're doing all right. You know when you signed, why only 3 years?
I never signed deals longer than that. Just like I always, we didn't have ratchet clauses back then.
Because what I was going to say is the 10-year deal.
Yeah.
Like, would anyone have had the audacity to go in for a 10-year deal back then?
Well, the game was on an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's like, and again, like I always sort of backed myself to get better and make more money. So I didn't want to lock myself into anything really. Like
I like that attitude.
I would have been comfortable signing 1-year deals and just keep. But look, players want security, and a 10-year deal it's phenomenal. I mean, it's crazy. Back in those days, though, I mean, the salary cap, I think it was like 1.6 million. The salary cap for an entire squad. So, like, it was always going to get bigger. So you didn't want to sort of hamstring yourself by having this long-term deal that you were locked into, regardless of what happens to the salary cap. Because again, there were no ratchet clauses and stuff back in those days.
Yeah, it would be. I'd love to experience that Super League war style. I think, like, it as a observer of sport, like in England, we had no idea what was going on. It was like Super League. I don't know. And I was only 12, so probably the way information flowed back then. But it was crazy. It fascinates me around like the catalyst, the friendships broken up, like all that sort of stuff. That
I'll tell you, like what was a shock to everybody. I think was particularly the Super League players, probably more than the ARL players. Was in the Super League year. Like if we went anywhere, it was in a limo. If we flew anywhere, it was at the front of the plane. If we stayed anywhere, it was 5-star. Everything was laid on. Every event we went to, like, it was unbelievable. And then it all came back together. And my old man was the boss of Cronulla, and he'd be like, "Okay, boys, we got got to be at the airport, such and such." But like, "Are you not sending limos?" And he's like, "Mate, it's not Super League anymore. That's over." I was like, "No."
Bad when you've got a taste of luxury. It's difficult to go back.
We had limos right up to our houses to pick us up, to take us to events, the airport. It was crazy. I mean, New Zealand had probably owned a car service. They just looked after everyone.
Yeah.
It was good.
Matt, talking about complex decision making, you mentioned before growing up in the Cronulla area, and Cronulla's in Queensland, right?
You're one of them. No, I didn't grow up in the Cronulla area. I grew up in Queensland. Like I came there as a young boy.
Define growing up.
Well, formative years. You know, like
so
when
you born in Caringbah?
Yeah. Born at Southern Hospital. Yeah. But my mum and dad met on the Gold. They lived on the Gold Coast. Met on the Gold Coast. Back in the day, Jammer, when State of Origin started in 1980, the criteria was where you played your first grade football. Because if you lived in if you were born in WA, you can't play? Like, no, if you're playing football in Queensland, then you play for Queensland. My old man played first grade or A grade football in Queensland. Like, he should have played for Queensland. He played 1972. He played for the Gold Coast Tigers, which the Southport Tigers, played in the Centres. They won the comp that year. My grandfather drove him down to Sydney, and he got a start at Cronulla. There's a bit more to that story, but so that's how he ended up in Cronulla. My mum, Gold Coast girl, they met on the Gold Coast at the Nobby's Beach chairlift, and fell in love as 16, 17-year-olds. When my grandfather wanted to take my dad to Sydney, my dad ran away because he didn't want to leave my mum, and he said the only way I'll go to Sydney is if I can marry Carol on her 18th birthday, which is my mum, and they got married on the day after my dad's 18th birthday. They weren't allowed to get married on his birthday. Had my brother that year, had my sister and I 2 years later. My mum is one of 13 kids, born and bred on the Gold Coast. I grew up on the Gold Coast. I've got 1,000 cousins. You can imagine how many cousins I got with she's one of 13. I had no desire at all to play for New South Wales.
Did you get any pushback?
Absolutely. Oh, mate, I I nearly had a fight with one of my best mates in the dressing room when I made the announcement that when it came into the news. He was filthy that I was playing for Queensland. Thought I should have been playing for New South Wales.
Who's that?
A guy named Luke Taper. One of my best mates to this day. Great fella. But we went at it. He was furious. But that's rugby league, right? Passion.
Yeah.
And of course people pushed back because I was born there. My dad played for New South Wales. But mate, when Wayne Bennett rang me, he said, "Hey, who are you going to play for?" And I said, "Do I have a choice?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can choose." He goes, "You were born down there." He said, "But I know your background." He goes, "You've never played for New South Wales. Why would you start now?" And I said, "Yeah, you're right." He's like, "Your mum is a Queensland girl." He goes, "I'm not going to get you to make a decision now. Ring your dad. Speak to your dad about it." So I rang Dad and I said, "Dad, Wayne Bennett rang me. He wants me to play for Queensland." And he goes, "They're not picking the side for 2 weeks." He said, "Yeah." He said, "But if I say Queensland now, he'll pick me now." And he said, "Right." He goes, "Well, you've never played for New South Wales. Your mum will be over the moon." He goes, you better ring him back and tell him you're playing for Queensland." So I rang Mum first and told her. Mum broke down in tears. She was just wrapped. Rang Wayne back and I said, I'm in. And he goes, "All right, well, here's the deal." He goes, "We picked the team in 2 weeks. If anybody finds out you're playing for me before them," he goes, "you won't be in the team."
And you already told Mum and Dad.
Yeah. But this is the thing, right? So, like, you know what football clubs are like, and my old man's the boss. So I'm like, oh, shit. So I ring Dad back and said, "Dad," and could you imagine this? It comes out that I was going to play for Queensland and then they don't pick me. Do you reckon New South Wales are going to pick me? Like, no chance. So I ring Dad. I'm like, "Dad, this is the most important thing you'll ever do for me. Like, it's just keep your mouth shut for 2 weeks. You cannot say a word." And I spoke to Mum. Didn't even tell my brother. Didn't even tell my sister. Like, I just had to keep it completely locked down. And got picked. And that's when me and Luke went at it in the dressing room. Not physically, but it was a verbal altercation that it got pretty heated. And yeah, look, and I get it. You know, I know how much people love footy and they love their teams, but you know, it was bigger than just picking a state for me. It was about family, and so yeah, it's a little different to some other situations that we've had over the past.
Yeah, I think that's it when you articulate it and describe that passion for playing for Queensland and your connection to that state as opposed to the connection to New South Wales.
Well, Greg Bird's a very close friend of mine, and you know, Dad took him to Cronulla as a young kid, and him and Dad became very close. And when Greg came to the Gold Coast, he lived with me for a bit of time, and every year State of Origin comes around, mate, it gets ugly between he and I, because he's like, of course, and people, you know, listen to this will be like, "You should have played for New South Wales." Yeah, maybe, but I didn't. And I played for where I wanted to play, and Greg hates it, so he ripped into me flat out, and I just needle him a little bit.
But to be fair, why would New South Wales want you to play for them if you don't want to play for them? Do you know what I mean? Like, what part of that surely is you want players that feel connected to your state, that want to represent your state.
Well, I've done it since I was 12 years old, so it was not. It was. I didn't think I was going to be able to choose because Dad played for New South Wales. I thought they were going to make me play for New South Wales.
Would you have?
Well, if they made me and they picked me, I would have played for them. I would have had to. Yeah. But I'll tell you a funny story. My first meeting in Origin, so that was the Super League year, right? That I played for Queensland in '97. In '98, when I played Origin, so obviously aligned myself with the Queensland Origin side. I'm in the first team meeting. No coach in there. It's just a team, and it's Choppy close. And Choppy, one of the most passionate Queenslanders. And now, funny story. When he backhanded Eric Growth, I think it was in '81. He backhanded Eric Growth and then dived over for a try. And it's a pretty famous clip. My old man's at marker and doesn't really try to tackle him. And I said, "Mate, why didn't you try and tackle him?" He goes, "Mate, if you'd have seen the look in his eyes, you wouldn't have tried either." He goes, "The only thing I could have done was probably pull the shit out of the back of my pants and throw it at him." He goes, "Mate, he had eyes spinning in his head. It was crazy." But Choppy, yeah, he's a legend of a guy. Great man, Choppy. He was our manager. And I'm sitting in the team meeting room. Like I didn't have that inbuilt hate for New South Wales like most Queenslanders did because my dad played for him. And, you know, obviously as a kid, I supported him playing for New South Wales. I was only young, like, 4, 5, 6 when he played Origin. But I go into like the first team meeting And Choppy is in the front of the room, and Darren Smith was my roomie, and he made me sit in the front of everything, like front of the bus, front of the room. Like, he wanted me to get the full experience in front of the bus, because back in those days we used to drive down to Caxton Street, and I dead set thought we'd killed about 4 people driving down there in the bus. I thought we'd run over plenty. Mick, the bus driver, would always tell me, he goes, "No, mate, that was a can. I know when it's a foot." He goes, "I can feel it." But Choppy was just like, first meeting, in a rage, like, these New South Wales, this and that, and you can imagine the profanity and who they are, and they think this and they think that, and and I'm sort of sitting there looking at him thinking, he's talking about my old man. It was sort of weird. But then, he taught me how to hate him, and hate him good.
Obviously, you're making inroads in NRL, killing it, played for Australia, played for Queensland, doing so well at the Sharks. And then you don't have a manager, but we spoke about it before, this idea pings in your head to go to rugby. Was the attraction the 2003 World Cup?
Well, we played, Wendell and I played in the 2000 Rugby League World Cup in the UK, and we won the final, and I asked him...
At Wembley?
Yeah. No, it was at...
Old Trafford.
Old Trafford, yeah.
I think I was at that game as well.
Right. Yeah, it was a great game. We was tied early, then we sort of ran away with it in the end.
What? I was at that game. I've seen you play twice. Like.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Ended up speaking to Wendell, actually, after the final, and we're in a bar in the hotel, and I just asked him, I said, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "Man, I think I'm going to go to rugby." And when he said it, I'm like, "You go to rugby? You've never played rugby. I've played rugby. They're all my mates playing rugby." I thought I should go to rugby. So I injured my shoulder that year, and I missed sort of the first 6 months of the season. I had a shoulder reconstruction. Came back for the last couple of months. But in that period, I spoke to Dumph and like John Dunphy from Shimano, the guy I mentioned at the start. I said, "Mate, can you tee up a meeting for me? Just get him to the office." And literally, like, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I needed to explore options, and I didn't want to just wait for Cronulla. Like, Cronulla had put an offer on the table. Chris Anderson was coming in to coach, and I still didn't want to play on the wing. And Chris Anderson was the Australian coach at the time, and I was playing for him in the Australian team on the wing. And he came to Cronulla. He pulled me in for a meeting prior to him coming the following year in 2002. And he said, "Mate, I really want you to be here at the club. They put a really good offer on the table." And I said to him, "Mate, I need to know, and I want you to be honest with me. Will you give me a shot of playing anywhere else?" And he said, "No." He goes, "You're the best winger in the country, and you'll be staying on the wing." He could have lied to me, and I credited
the easy call there to get you to stay is mate.
If he said, "Mate, I'll give you
bullshit you,"
he said, "I'll give you a shot at 5'8". If he had said, "I'll give you a shot at 5'8", I would have signed. I would have signed on the spot. He said, "Nah." He goes, "You're a winger," and he goes, "I'm going to leave you on the wing."
You would have signed on the spot, but later down the track, you would have had so much animosity towards him because
mate.
It's like, so I'm just trying to think. You lie to get what you want, but it'll
come back and
bite you in the arse.
Yeah. So and I'm grateful that he didn't lie to me, and he just said, "No, mate, you're going to play on the wing if you stay here at Cronulla." That's when I went and had that meeting, and the ARU, Jeff Miller, who was the head of the high performance unit, came out and he just laid all their cards on the table, and there were a lot of cards, I got to tell you. One was, playing with my old mates, one, traveling the world. Obviously the money was going to be good. That didn't bother me, but it was just, the World Cup in 03, playing in Bledisloe, all those things that I dreamed about doing when I was a kid. So, and that's when he left, and I said to John, I'm playing, I'm going to rugby. And I'd made my decision. Now, I got paid well to go to rugby, no question. Like I certainly wasn't on the Wendell money, but as they say, big deal sells, so they had to pay for him to get him over there. At the 11th hour, the Bulldogs came in with a bigger offer than I got, and to play centre. They wanted me to play centre, and there was more money than what I'd been offered to go and play rugby. And my mate John rang me at the time. He's like, mate, the Bulldogs have reached out and they want to have a chat. It was about 50 grand a year more than what I was making, which is pretty significant money back then, and it was significant now. But I just said to him, no, I'm not interested. I really want to go and I want to go and play rugby. The following year, that was when the Bulldogs got stripped of all their points.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I would have been a part of that. So I had Big Mace at my house actually a while back, and we were having a few beers, and Mace is like, mate, why didn't you come? I'm like, well, because if I came, mate, I would have been caught up. He goes, but you would have won a comp with us. I'm like, yeah, probably, mate. They might have had to get rid of me though. Yeah. So, you never know. But look, they were a red hot side back then. That forward pack they had was ruthless. Yeah, it was terrifying. Mark O'Mealy and Randy and Osatasi and
incredible. Tony Grimaldi
would have been great to play with them. They were not fun to play against. No. I can assure you of that.
When you're having this meeting with Rugby Australia, are they, when you say they put their cards on the table, have they put the card on the table of we're going to get Big Del, we're going to get Lottie Takiri?
No, I think Del had already signed.
Oh, he'd already signed.
Yeah, Del was gone. But Lottie wasn't even in the frame. Lottie was a year later. So I think Lottie saw what we were doing and saw an opportunity there, I guess. And look, he's Fijian heritage. His dad played rugby, and I think wanted to come over and play rugby. He's a great guy, Lottie, great teammate, and can play footy. I can tell you. Can celebrate as well. Him and Big Del, they're good fun to be with. It was really about just me going over, and Wendell. I was actually keen to at the time too. Like it was becoming tough having my old man as my boss.
That's fair.
So it was sort of like moving on from there. And my mum, she was terminally ill at the time. She was dying of cancer, and she was in palliative care. So she was in the middle of it all, and it was a really awkward time. But I just needed to get away. I wanted to get my relationship back with my dad, and I needed to be there for Mum. And Mum said to me, "You can't leave Cronulla. You're just going to ruin your dad." Because he was the boss. And I'm just like, she's like a month away from dying, and I'm just like, oh no, this is not going to be good. So fortunately, Mum had sort of seen in the sort of previous months how sort of, I guess, disjointed Dad and my relationship was, based on him being my boss and trying to negotiate contract and all this sort of stuff. So ended up Mum saying to me before she passed, she actually said to me, she goes, "You actually have to leave Cronulla to get your dad back. Otherwise, this is not going to work." So I got her blessing at the 11th hour, which was pretty special. Yeah. And even Dad, Dad came and sat with me in the press conference to announce that I was leaving. And then came to the press conference with the New South Wales Waratahs to announce that I was going to play for them. So I was very grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess not agreeing with the decision, but understanding it.
Yeah, he didn't like it. There's no question about that. And there's a picture online, if you can probably Google it and find it, of Dad sitting next to me with the Waratah stuff behind him, and the look. I think he's got his hair on his face, and the look on his face is just like, "What the hell am I doing here?" But yeah, he was being a dad, at that moment.
Yeah, that's it. Separation.
He found it hard to separate that. Which is what made it hard for us to have a relationship when he was my boss. So, when I left and started playing rugby, we became best mates again. We started playing golf again. We started hanging out again, and he started hanging out with our, the grandkids, and it was probably the best thing that happened to our relationship. It was a tough time though.
When you, I guess, go back to rugby in a way. Were you well received, obviously, with this league background and with the Bledisloe and more importantly the World Cup? Like I can imagine that maybe a fraction of animosity towards you.
Yeah, certainly from the players that played my position.
Yeah. Well, all of the back three
Yeah.
were all leaguers.
Yep. Yeah, look, I mean, I can't speak for him, but, you know, Chris Latham, he was a freak of a player. Matt Burke, freak of a player. You know, I came into the Waratahs. Matt Burke moved to outside centre. And to Matt Burke's credit and to who he was to me and as a teammate and as a friend, he took that on the chin and then came back and coached me how to play fullback. And he was the best fullback Australia's ever had. So it was like phenomenal, you know, like, and to this day, Berkey and I speak all the time. You know, we look after his daughter. So, you know, I love the bloke. You know, he took me under his wing at a time when, it's phenomenal to think that a guy would do that, you know, who is the best. It probably wasn't received as well at the Wallaby level, but it worked out. We won some games. We won at Bledisloe and got so close in 2003 in the World Cup. There were difficult moments. I think I got a bit. I was a pretty immature back then. I would say I was 26 and came over, you know, all the bravado and all that sort of stuff, and I sort of didn't get on great with a few of the administrators, and that was probably my rebellion against that, was to go and get tattoos, and that's what sort of, I had tattoos, but you couldn't see any, and that was sort of like the immaturity in me was like, well, you know, I'll show
I know,
I know it'll piss you off,
especially 2002 tattoos probably not as fashionable. Yeah, especially on display. It would be a shock.
Yeah. So I remember I got this tattoo on my arm, and it's a rat driving a hot rod with a hot chick on his lap, which is was my wife, and he's carrying a surfboard and a footy, and I got it's like right. I don't know, which arm is it? This one. It's right down this arm. Is it this one? Yeah, maybe. And I just rock up to Wallaby camp in a singlet, and everyone's like, "What have you done?" I'm like, "What? It's a tattoo." Like back then, it was sort of more bikies and stuff, you know, like the criminal element, not so much the. Well, when I say bikies, a criminal element. Well, what people, you know.
Yeah, the perception.
The perception
is
So they weren't very happy with it, which then you know, just like again, immaturity. Just I'll get more. So I got more, and one of my Scotty Wiseman, or one of my coaches, he's such a good guy. He's at Parramatta now, great fella. He would just shake his head and go, "Rat, what are you doing?" And
what did the administration do in order for you to feel like you needed to rebel against them, or push back, or if they're landing jabs at you, you've come with the knockout blow of coming in?
I just heard some comments that they'd made to people that knew me, like the hired help and stuff. Like, not the respect wasn't there. It was sort of more like, you know, we've just brought these guys in to bolster us, but they're not us, you know. And you felt it in certain, you know, post-match functions and stuff. You wouldn't get any love from any of them, but they'd be, you know, you might have had a blinder, and you know, I did in a few games and nothing. But you know, they're going up to the other boys and speaking to them, and you know, giving them all the pats on the back and the love, and you know, I just sort of felt like it was a bit of a third wheel, and it frustrated me. I felt underappreciated, and that's where, you know, I probably wasn't, but I felt like I was, and that's where the sort of the immaturity comes into it, and not being able to sort of handle it the way I probably would in this day and age.
But then you as a young man, you can understand that. But like for them, being older and more experienced, like should have recognised the situation and go, "Let's like this superstar player is here with us. I've got to have the emotional intelligence to recognise that it's difficult for him. Let's go and show him some love." And let's bring him, like, assume we want to win the World Cup. Is it better to treat this superstar as an outsider or bring him in and jump on board for the big win?
Well, it certainly wasn't on a day-to-day basis with the squad and with the coaching staff and all that sort of stuff. That was a great place. But there were certain, like, I just know things were said to people that were friends of mine that certain administrators didn't know were friends of mine about me. And that sort of really fired me up. So I thought, well, stuff you. I'll change the look of your game. If I can't change the game, I'll change the way your players look.
How did like Eddie Jones, like I guess, take this all on board?
Eddie was good.
Stride?
Eddie was great. I mean, Eddie loves rugby league.
I've had him on the show. He's a fascinating chat.
Yeah. But Eddie and I got on really well. To the point where like we'd have many conversations. We went at it. We hugged. We did it all across the board. We yelled at each other. We hugged. We had good conversations, bad conversations. He accused me of things. I accused him of things. Like just a standard relationship. Yeah. But I respected him as a coach. He's a very smart coach, and he helped my game tremendously. And I had, look, you take out his last foray here with the Australian Wallaby side, and I know what he was trying to do. Like he was trying to shake it up. That's what he was trying to do. Because, I mean, what have they done in the last 20 years? Like very little. And he was just trying. He was trying to get a quick fix. He was trying to get something just to get Australia back behind this team. Fortunately, it's Australian rugby's in a far better position now than what it was, and the team is doing better than what they have. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but you take that out of the equation. For me, Eddie Jones was fantastic. He was a great coach. He was hard. He kept you were accountable. Man, he was a tough coach, but he was a great coach. I thoroughly enjoyed playing for him.
Do you think the Wallabies can be rescued and get back to those days where you are competing in World Cup finals, holding up your gloves against the Lions?
Yeah, well, look, I think what makes you better is competing. That's what makes you better. Competing against people that are better than you.
Drive standards.
To try to drive standards up. The best thing, and it might be an unpopular opinion, the best thing that has happened to Australian Rugby Union in the last 15 years is the Melbourne Rebels going broke. Because that talent now is back into the four teams. I never, ever once in my life have thought we've got enough talent to foster 5 rugby teams, professional rugby teams here in Australia, and and keep us at that top level. I just haven't seen. I've never thought it, and the proof is in the results that we've had. Now, you take one of those teams out of the picture, you filter that talent back through those other 4 provinces, states, whatever you want to call them. The competition level rises for positions in those teams, and all of a sudden you get a better team. And the proof is right now the Queensland Reds are on top of the ladder. Yeah, I think we've got teams in 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
It's an interesting take, and the unintended consequences of dismantling a team or dissolving a team is everybody else gets better here or everyone else around them gets better. Yeah,
that's right. And I can't remember the year it was, but maybe a couple of years ago, all the Queensland teams were doing pretty average. Origin comes around, they get pumped by New South Wales. A couple of years ago, New Queensland teams are doing well. All the Queenslanders, they get picked into, they don't all play for the Queensland teams, but a lot of them do. And, when you're winning, you're confident.
Yeah.
And you go into and I'm hoping that transfers from, Super Rugby into the Wallaby squad. You've got these teams that are winning games on New Zealand soil, beating these Kiwi teams. Now all of a sudden they come together, and you'd like to think that, right, well, it's not going to be a belief thing. We've already beaten the New Zealand teams over in New Zealand.
Well, it goes from needing to believe to knowing.
Yeah.
Like I know. Like from a player mindset point of view, like let's instill belief, instill confidence that we can get a victory. But hang on a minute, and now I actually know. I know we can win.
Absolutely. Well, and also, I mean, you asked the question: can the Wallabies get back to? I mean, when we were playing for the Wallabies, Wendell, Lottie, myself, back in the day, like the Wallabies were Australia's winter team. The cricket team, the Australian cricket team, were the Australia's summer team. We were the national teams because playing for Australian Kangaroos is amazing, and it was a dream of me to do it. And I'll never, ever speak down, look down, or anything of that nature when I put on that jersey. That meant everything to me. But the international game in rugby league is not what the international game in rugby union is. So the Australian Wallabies, they were a big team back then. They won a lot though.
Yeah.
And that helps.
They were popular.
Yeah. But you see nowadays...
It gave children as well something to aspire to be.
Yeah. You see the spring tour last year, they win their first 2 test matches, and the way that the Australian psyche changed towards the Wallabies. Doesn't take much. It's a sleeping giant. And they win. If they win the Bledisloe, you watch Australia go bananas for them again. It's just, you got to win. Al Davis, who used to own the Raiders.
Just win, baby.
Just win, baby. Mate, he didn't care what his players did if they won. Like, they were a bunch of misfit ratbags. But they won.
What a great side that Raiders team were. Have you seen America's game?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I bet that those Raiders teams from like 70s, 80s, love hearing stories about them.
Yep.
And obviously that's what goes on the hour of America's game, not what I'd love to know what really went on.
Well, the thing is that, like, Howie Long, who's, a great broadcaster now, was a part of those teams, and he's the most, like, not vanilla, but mate, he played a hard game, but he's so articulate, he's great in the media. But you hear him tell the stories about those guys he played with, like Lyle Alzado, and these, like, absolute animals. It's crazy. It's crazy. But just win, baby. It helps. It helps everything. You win. And the alternative, or the flip side of that is, you're losing. Like, how easy it is to make a mountain out of a molehill. Like, the littlest thing becomes an issue when you're losing. When you're winning, it's just sort of like, don't worry about that. Just win, baby.
I guess for Australian rugby union now, if they win and they just win, does that pave over some cracks? Like, in terms of their pathway systems?
Yeah, look,
what I'm trying to say? I'm like,
the pathway systems, I think, are strong. And people go, no, but it's all GPS. Go and do a socio-economic test of all the first 15 players in GPS schools. You'll see where they come from. They don't come from. A lot of them don't come from those GPS schools. They get there. They're on scholarships. Their system's good. They just got to keep them.
Yeah, keeping. Because the NRL has become so popular. I can understand why a talented, athletic teenager that has both options open to them would choose NRL.
Yeah,
or NRLW over.
Potentially, but there are certainly some that they're born and bred into rugby, and they'll stay in rugby. I mean, that's what they love. They're very different games now. They were different back then, and everyone they would think it's you make the switch, and you're going to play for the Wallabies, or you're going to it's not as simple as that. And coming from, like, I've got massive respect after doing it for Mark Nwanga-Tikawazi or Carter Gordon, who have come over to play rugby league. Like, rugby league's harder. Like, and not just a little bit. Like, it is a lot harder in terms of the fitness. You need to be fitter. The contact's greater. The technical aspect of rugby union is harder. There's no question about that. But in terms of the physicality of rugby league, for me, rugby league is light years ahead in terms of, like, hardness for me. Now, I can't speak for a Phil Wall or a George Smith, who are diving into rucks and sticking their head on the bottom of a ruck trying to get a ball out with boots going around them and all that sort of stuff. I didn't do a lot of that, thankfully. But for these backs to come over and try to play rugby league, and I'll bet you, if you ask Mark what's harder in terms of the physical nature of league or union, he'll tell you rugby league. Like, it's a tougher game and it's fast. You got to be so fit to play it. So for these guys, that takes a lot of courage to go, right, I'm going to walk away from what I know I'm good at, and I'm playing for Australia, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to see how I go. Like, it was different for me, Wendell, Lottie, going over to rugby. It was like they were chasing us. You know what I mean?
Most definitely. I think as well, I guess this is only observation. This isn't lived experience like you have. But in league, especially with players in the outside backs, it requires you to focus the whole time. You have a play off, and against really good sides, you'll get found out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you're not moving forward, it happens to you see the difference between the good middles and like the ones that excel. They never have a play, especially last play. But it's not your job to clean up the kicks. Some they just watch the kick and they're thinking about their next run. But the really, really good ones, they're back in the mix of going just in case.
I say to every young player that I speak to, if you are not coming off the field emotionally exhausted as much as physically, you're not playing the game. You're not. You've got to be thinking every minute of every second of that game, where do I need to be, what do I need to be doing. Like if you're not doing that, then you're missing your assignments. There is no question, because nobody can be on autopilot for 80 minutes and think they're going to be in the right spot all the time.
You'll be concentrating.
You've got to be so focused.
Looking for triggers, looking for cues to go.
Yeah.
Like,
and that you know what that sort of reminds me of is it takes me back to, like, I've got a few mates that are musos, and they played at big crowds, and I remember saying to one of them once, I said, mate, what is it like standing on stage playing to a crowd, just having them in the palm of your hand? Like, it must feel like amazing. He goes, mate, you do it every week. I'm like, no, I play for them, you play to them. I said, I can't look at the crowd. I haven't got time to look at the crowd. I haven't got time to. When I'm in the heat of a game, I'm the last thing there could be no one in the stand. It doesn't matter. It does matter. I mean, you hear the emotion, but you just hear a roar, right? You can't be looking at them like playing, like maybe after you score a try or whatever. But that's the only
time is when you score or concede.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit, there's a crowd here.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
It happened to us in COVID. So playing without fans.
Right. Oh, you played.
Yeah, playing without fans is eerie. But then, in the moment, you don't.
You're not thinking about it.
You forget that when we score and it's like, oh, where's the cheer? Or it goes to the video ref. Where's that raw? Or you concede and say, oh.
Yeah, and like the crowd, they certainly might help you in the first minute of the game, like just for the emotion. But once the game starts, you got to take emotion out of it. If you're playing with emotion, you're not going to play well.
The 2003 World Cup. You've experienced the build-up of a state of origin.
Yep.
You've been involved in the NRL. How did that compare? And that experience of having not just a state behind you in Queensland, but the nation. Yeah, no, it's the biggest thing I've been a part of, without a doubt. I mean, I remember we played France in the opening game at Stadium Australia at Accor. What is it, Accor? On out at home? Yes, yeah.
Played out there first game, and I snuck out, sort of put just a hoodie on, and snuck out of the dressing room because I wanted to watch part of the opening ceremony, and just the enormity of it, just the people, and that was just the first game. That take away like the semi-final we beat New Zealand, the final against England. I mean, it's like a state of origin match every week, and the fans and the engagement, and it blew my mind. I remember sitting there before that, while that opening ceremony, and shed a tear, just thinking, oh wow, like I'm
part of something.
I'm here, like it's I came across and it worked. I've made it. That was a moment. Were you treated by the public as heroes at that time as well, like the heroes of a nation? Well, it took us to beat New Zealand in the semi until they treated us like heroes, because we'd had a pretty ordinary year that year. We got beat by New Zealand by about 50 points in the first Bledisloe match. Right. But and this is where I'll say Eddie was a great coach. Like, we got beat by about I think they put about 40 on us when we scored a couple of tries. And then the return match was I think it was at Eden Park in New Zealand. We hadn't won there forever. Oh no, it wasn't in Eden Park. It was somewhere else. But Eddie worked out the All Blacks. He said, this is what we need to do to beat them. And I think they beat us by 4 points in the next game. And we knew if we got them again, that they won't beat us. Well, what did he change? Well, what we were doing is we were not kicking the ball right out. so they could play fast line-outs, and we were turning over and we're keeping the ball in play when we kicked it. We were kicking long, keeping the ball in play, and we were turning over too much ball. And the All Blacks at that time, their broken field play was unbelievable. They couldn't beat us at set piece. Our scrum and our line-out were as good as theirs or better. But if you gave them set piece, if you gave them broken field ball, they would just tear you to shreds.
So you got to find
Carlos Spencer, who was Doug Howlett, Christian Cullen. I don't think Cullen was there at that time. Well, maybe he was. Cullen, Joe Rokokoko, like the speed that they had was just phenomenal. So we needed to keep the ball. If we were going to give them the ball, we had to give it to them at set piece. So our defensive line was
execute a game plan to limit their amount of broken field action.
So if you watch,
wow, that's fascinating stuff.
If you watch the semi-final, if I kicked the ball and I kicked it out, it went out by 15 metres. It was in the crowd. If we didn't kick the ball, we never kicked the ball and kept the ball in play. So we never just kicked downfield and got our defensive line down there. And mate, we got an early lead and we never surrendered it. We beat them in the semi-final, and then it was about beating England in the final, and that's when the country just went into overdrive because no one really expected us to beat New Zealand. So once we beat New Zealand, it was crazy. Like the messages that we got, I remember Powderfinger sending in a note, or Bernard sending in a note saying, between Wendell Sailor's bling and Matt Rogers' tattoos, you'd make a great rock band. Rip in, boys, go after, the people that came in. And when we had people speak to us before each game, and it was really, they were inspiring people and people that we looked up to. And anyway, and for the final, we had Ricky Stewart come in, and I was so pumped to have Stick come in and speak to us.
Did you? Because he has a rugby background.
Yeah, he played for the Wallabies. But he I think he had an issue. Something happened with his daughter, and he couldn't come in. And man, I was just shattered. I was shattered that we weren't going to get Stick come in and speak to us. But him and Eddie were good mates because Eddie coached the Brumbies before he coached the Wallabies. So he'd met Ricky down there, and they'd become friends. And obviously they were coaching at the time. And so they'd become good mates. And look, it was amazing to be a part of. I still, people ask me about it, and it's still one that I just haven't been able to shake. Like just the disappointment in not getting the job done. To be double overtime and get beaten. I still, there's a photo of Johnny Wilkinson taking the shot at goal and me just standing there, and I'm just looking at him right next to the ruck. I'd sort of made the tackle. Matt Dawson made a break. Justin Harrison fell for a dummy. Dawson made a break. I tackled him. And there's a bit of a ruck formed, and I think someone pick and drove, and I sort of ended up in that. And then I sort of got myself out of the ruck, and Dawson ends up back at halfback, and he goes in to grab the ball, and I jumped. And Andre Watson, who was the referee, said, 15, if you move, it's a penalty. And it was in front of the post.
Oh,
so
God,
I can't move.
Yeah. Oh, so you can't put check.
I can't go and put pressure on.
And
to
this
my
is
right,
in 100. This is after 100 minutes of action.
It's a long time. And Phil Wall's on my right, Justin Harrison's on my left. And they're amazing guys and great athletes, but they're not fast. And I thought, there's no way he's going to kick this. And he passes the ball, they go, and there's a photo of them straining and me just standing there watching it go over the post. And, oh, mate, that group of men that I played with in 2003, they were, up there with the best group of men I've played with. Still incredibly close, the group. We still catch up. We had a reunion last year that I actually didn't get to, but we'll get around each other around this World Cup, this British and Irish Lions tour, and the World Cup that comes to Australia. But that was probably the biggest in terms of disappointment. That was a tough one.
Can I ask you what Eddie said to the group after? Because I'm thinking back to the Rugby League World Cup in 2017, and we lost to Australia 6-0. And Wayne said to us after the game, it was one of the best games of Rugby League anyone could watch.
I remember it.
6-0. It doesn't sound appealing, but
they're my favourite games.
Yeah, and obviously on the losing side, same as you, but Wayne got us in. He knew, like, again, that connection to the group. For an international team that hadn't been together that long, I've never felt more connected. Like, love those lads. We still have the WhatsApp group. We still catch up. We so many in jokes, little sayings that like someone will say, maybe sneak it into an interview or something. It's like, oh God, But Wayne just said, guys, you didn't lose today. You just ran out of time. And it was like,
I mean, look, that England team, Martin Johnson led England team. That was a phenomenal team. They were on a 15-game win streak coming into that final. We'd been a bit hot and cold. So, look, if we'd won, it would have been amazing. England deserved their victory. They'd been the best team for the previous couple of years. But yeah, the pain after that game, I mean, Eddie was so caring for his group. I mean, like, he cared about his players, and he just he went around individually. He sat with everyone, gave them a little hug and mate, proud of you, appreciate you, that sort of thing. It's a difficult moment,
shattering when
you've seen, and my daughter, she plays at a pretty elite level soccer. She wants to be a Matilda, and she's doing pretty well. But that's the hardest conversations I have with her is when she's done well but they lose and she's so disappointed.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I address this to lift her up, make her feel good, because she's so team orientated, but she's had a great game, but they've lost. So that's a tough one,
Obviously, considering the opposition, the rivalry between England and Australia, I don't know if there's I guess from England, we don't have a rival that compares. I feel like England are against a lot of teams, a lot of countries.
The French, surely.
I think in football, soccer,
yes,
the French, Italians, Argentina, English don't
football. They're against everyone.
Ireland, Wales, Scotland, But with Australia, there seems to be like a connection, a respect, a lot of similarities in our cultures, in our values. But when you come together on the sporting field and to be here, do you just want the planet to open you up?
Yeah, mate, it's hard. And the thing is, what I realise is, like, I beat myself up over a couple of moments. There was a moment where I got tackled, but I didn't think I was held, so I didn't release the ball, and I got back up and I got penalised. And we were down in their half and we were attacking, and they ended up getting a penalty and kicking it out and getting down our end. And then there was another moment in extra time. I've been hitting the ball great all game, and it was to get the ball out. Our line out was good. We could compete against anyone. The last line out before the goal got kicked, the field goal got kicked, Griggs threw me on the inside a little bit to my left, and I had Lewis Moody coming off the back of the line out, and he was just making a beeline for me. And I ran out to the left, and I just cut down my angle, so I couldn't get much yardage. And I remember thinking, and this is all in like a 0.5 of a second time. Do I just reef it down the middle of the field and back out of fence once just to get us down there, or do I kick it out, which is what I've been instructed to do? And in that moment, I thought I'd just kick it out, play the safe option. And I kicked it out, and it gave them a line out on the 45-metre line and put them into sort of field goal attacking range. So I just beat myself up over it for years, right? Our defensive line held them up really well initially, but I was speaking to Justin Harrison about that, and he's like, mate, I fell for the dummy off Matt Dawson. And I was speaking to Griggs about it, and Griggs is like, mate, I threw you inside. That's not your fault. And then Lottie's like, mate, I caught that bomb off the first try. Like, why didn't we do it more? We've all got these things in our head, and every player's got them. At that game, what could we have done better?
All those little moments that you just think,
it's killer. I'll never forget. I watch games like those Broncos. They won't forget that grand final for their life that they lost. That's hard. And as fans, it's hard, but as a player, and you've been in it, and you've got to relive those moments. It is so hard. And then every pom I come up and meet, Did you play in 2003? Yes.
Yeah.
Every minute of it. It's like, mate, can we not talk about it?
You know,
I thought I was over it.
Mate, you know what? Like, I know in your life you've been through a lot, and you know myself as well. Have like I guess a number of mental health issues, but we use a professional for that to help us through life's difficult moments. And we say, oh, it's just a game. Like, get over that. But like there's an element of grief. Speaking to like to be able to play back in your mind an event over 20 years ago, and I have the same with some things that happened on the football field where I'm like, fuck, you know, and it'll just every now and then I'll be thinking I'm in a good spot on a beach or going for a run. I remember that game. You know, and do you need to spend time with a professional to help you through? Yeah. Oh, so you've brought this up in therapy to be like, my foot, this get like this.
Oh yeah. I look, you know, going through what I went through with my old man, you know, when he passed, that was a sort of a catalyst to sort of trying to make sure my head's in a good space. But yeah, mate, I've fleshed it all out with some good professional head doctors that have helped me address my crazy thoughts that go through my mind on a daily basis.
Because I guess for them as well, that they're used to dealing with trauma or you know, loss. Common situations that I remember speaking to my therapist. I said, I feel this is strange. I'm not going to go into the details. And she just goes, no, James, that's one of the main reasons people come to see me. Yeah. I'm like, I almost felt better for hearing that. Yeah. But so she's an expert in that particular area, situational mental health and emotional health. But I reckon I'd struggle to talk to her about things that have happened on a football field that still affect me. I have dealt with some of those with different psychologists.
Oh, no. It's just I mean, I haven't gone there specifically for that reason, but that certainly comes up, you know, and that's, you know, it's all a part of, you know, the makeup of Matt Rogers. You know, that's who what I am is, you know, a combination of events in my past that have got me to this point, and some have been really good, some have been horrific, and you know, you know, speaking to, you know, professionals in that mental health space, I've always had the opinion that I've got to put all the cards on the table to get the help that I need. I can't hold anything back.
Yeah, and sport is a big part of
it's who I was
and who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story about how shattering that was and how you still play it in your mind.
Yeah, 100%. I'm working back in rugby now too, and it makes it harder.
Like funny. The constant reminders.
And with the guys that I've played with, you know, with Berkey and Justin Harrison and these guys that, you know, just you take you back. And look, I'll tell you that those 5 years I had in rugby, they were tremendous. You know, met some phenomenal people, travelled the world, you know, had you know, just a real blessing. I felt like I had 3 careers. I had a career at the Sharks, had a career at rugby, and then I was a foundation member at the Gold Coast Titans. Yeah. And, you know, we improved every year I was there, and, you know, we played in a prelim, and then I retired. And that was enough.
Can I ask you about a couple of opponents in rugby? Jason Robinson and Jonah Lomu.
Yeah. Well, very different, I can tell you that. Jason Robinson, he scored England's first try in the corner, and I was sort of coming across in defence. His footwork is just out of this world. Like the way he moved, it just didn't seem right. It was like it was a glitch in his matrix or a glitch in mine, because the way he moved, and just phenomenal, and just a great human being, wonderful man, but terrifying. Like the worst place you can be with Jason Robinson is in front of him. Like if he can go both ways on you, you're screwed. The best place you can be is have him on one side of you. Yeah. But then he's got speed. So you've got to make sure he's not going to beat you with that. So the more often than not, he'll get you back on the inside. Like it's just, he was impossible to mark. just amazing talent. Jonah, on the other hand, I played against him a couple of times. Once as a 18-year-old kid. He was 18, I was 17. And he was the number 8 for the New Zealand schoolboys. And I was
number 8?
Half. Number 8, yeah. He was a number 8 as a kid. And for good reason. He picked up the ball at the back of the scrum every time that scrum was in our half, and he ran straight over the top of me. I had a funny story. So that game, I was on the bench. I came on with about 25 minutes to go. I'm playing fly half. Jason Eyre, who he was the open side flanker for the Australian schoolboys in 1993. And just an awesome guy, Queenslander from Marist Grove, great fella. Anyway, every time we had a scrum in our half, I'd say, and I could see Jonah was going to pick the ball up and he was going to run straight at me. I was 65 kilos. Jonah was 105 and he'd run 111 seconds flat, right? Mm. So I'm yelling out to Jace. I'm like, Airy, get out, give me a hand. He's like, yeah, mate, I got you, I'll be there. Mate, Jonah scored 3 tries in that last 25 minutes, running straight over the top of me. And I saw Jason about 5 or 6 years ago. I was just having a beer in a pub and we bumped into him. I said, mate, how you going? And just got chatting, how's life, all the stuff you talk about. And I just twigged. I thought, I'm just going to ask him about that game. I said, mate, do you remember that game? He goes, yeah. He goes, Rotorua. I'm like, yeah. I said, do you remember me yelling at you, get out and give me a hand? He goes, yeah, of course. I said, did you ever try to help me? He goes, not once. Not once. I'm like, right. Thanks for that. He goes, mate, he was terrifying. I'm like, yeah, he was. But then I played him again, in the back end of his career. When I came back over to rugby, I mean, it was the back end of his career. He was not because of his age, it's because of his health issues that he'd had. He was playing at the Hurricanes. I was playing fullback. They shifted the ball out to the left and they had a pretty red-hot side, and Christian Cullen was there, and got to Jonah, and I was sort of looping around the back of the defensive line to come in to sort of square up and tackle him, and that's sort of like the fullback's role in rugby. Is they'll defend around the back of the line and take out the tackle the last man. Ball gets to Jonah, and I've sort of come around the line, and I've sort of squared up, and as soon as I squared up, I'm like, I'm in a bad position here, and he's hit me in the chest, and mate, it must have knocked me like 10 or 15 metres backwards, like just hit me on my back, somersaulted back, and he just went on and scored. And so I didn't have a lot of great success. Yeah. George Gregan seemed to have his number. He could get a hold of him, but no, I certainly couldn't. He was too good for me.
Hey, mate, I'm very conscious of the time and how far we've been going. We normally do 4 questions for each every guest. I'll just do the one.
Right.
That I'm interested to hear your answer to. The most interesting person you've met so far.
Most interesting person. Yeah, back when I was growing up, I was in my dad. My grandfather was a massive St George fan. My dad wanted to go to St George, and St George wouldn't take him. He was too young, so they drove across the bridge to Cronulla, and Cronulla took him, and Tommy Bishop gave him a shot. But my dad became very close with Chook Raper, with Johnny Raper. Stewie Raper was my coach in that under-21 side, actually, his son. And he was one of the best coaches I had, taught me so much great stuff. But Chook Raper, for me as a kid, I was just enamoured by him. He was a god. The way that my grandfather spoke about him, he was a St George fan, and the way that my dad just idolised him. And I'm this little kid just enamoured by this god of a man, Chook Raper, who, became an immortal and, an icon of the game. And I'm very close with the Raper family and his wife Carol and his sons, Aaron and Stewie are great mates. But yeah, he was a man that just I was in awe of. Dad was dad, but Chook Raper was a god to me. And a funny story about Chook. We're at the King One Chinese restaurant one night, and I wanted to go home. I was like 6 years old or something. I wanted to go home. I was tired, and us kids were sort of, moaning about it being late. And Dad and Chook were having a few drinks, and the 2 Carols, their wives, my mum and Chook's wife, were at the table, and we're under the table, and Chook's like, just get under the table, Matty, and have a sleep, and Dad and I'll have a chat, and you can go later. And I'm like, I want to go. And Chook's like, Matt, if you be quiet, I'll give you this. And he pulled out $100 note. And it was the old grey nurse, like the big one. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be quiet. And my dad's like, Chook, you're not giving him $100. And Chook's like, listen, Sludge, if he's not having it, no one's having it. And he goes, mate, you're not giving a 6-year-old a $100 note. And I'm like, Dad. He's like, no, Chook, put it away. And he goes, righto, if he's not having it, no one's having it. And he ate the $100 note in front of me. I'm just like, he just ate a $100 note? It was just, which again, the aura of Chook, you know, like I was like, this guy is unbelievable. He's eating money. I think he would have been sifting through something the next morning to try to find it maybe. But Aaron has since told me that he used to play some funny games with money and hide money and stuff. And all that sort of stuff.
With that, I was going to say, if he, like, surely you're choking.
Well, maybe, but I think he's played some sort of trick with me. Yeah. But it was, I'll never forget it as a young kid.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, loved Chook and Carol and the Rapers. And yeah, had a great, like Aaron and I were training partners for a few years at the Sharks, and Stewie was my first coach, and yeah, just got a real love for the Raper family.
Well, that is a great way to finish off the swallowing of $100 note. Yes. Can finish it up. Thank you, mate, so much. I've enjoyed this.
Pleasure.
I'm sure our listeners will as well. There's so many areas that we could have gone.
We'll come back and do it again.
I got a rundown here that we basically didn't stick to, but I loved it, mate. And mate, the thing that sticks out for me is the person that you are and your wife, to tell that story about, okay, we've got this, we've seen our son change, but we're going to go and share the love. That's it's absolutely phenomenal, mate.
Appreciate it, mate.
Very special.
We still love it. We love doing it, and 4ASD Kids is thriving, and yeah, we're doing a lot of good stuff.
Brilliant, mate.